Hey guys, tonight we slip into sandals, sidle into a smoky Roman kitchen, and watch something ancient bubble and stink in a clay pot. Yep, we're talking about the original umami bomb, a brew so powerful it perfumed palaces and built an empire's budget garum, the fermented fish sauce of ancient Rome. Now, don't picture a tidy little bottle like your supermarket soy sauce. This stuff is more vivid. Imagine a mix of raw fish guts and salt left to ferment under the Mediterranean sun for months. It was his nose, wrinkling as it was addictive. And you, lucky traveler, are about to see exactly how it sloshed from humble beginnings to high society. Just a heads up, Ian, you probably won't survive the smell. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your city and local time in the comments. I love knowing who else is drifting off across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're hunched in the corner of a modest Roman domus, or home, somewhere around the 1st century BCE. The walls are plastered but cracked. The floor is a rough mosaic that crunches faintly as you shift. A smoky hearth sputters, and there, over the flames, a clay pot simmers. The smell hits you like a wet slap, salty, sour, undeniably fishy. Your eyes water. A woman in a simple tunic stirs the pot, humming. She's layering anchovies with salt in alternating stacks. Over time, the layers collapse under their own weight, exuding a briny, oily liquid. The earliest garum is less about prestige and more about preservation. Fish spoils fast, unless, of course, you let it rot on purpose. And rot it does. The process is ancient, predating Rome itself. Historians still argue whether the technique came from the Greeks, Phoenicians, or even Egyptians. What's clear is that the Romans took the idea and ran with it, eventually turning a household hack into an empire-wide obsession. Your nose adjusts slightly as the brew thickens. Someone drops in herbs, maybe oregano or dill. Another flicks in some wine. Each family has its own recipe, a secret twist passed down like a beloved lasagna. Only instead of tomato and cheese, it's viscera and sunshine. It's not just a cooking ingredient, it's culinary alchemy. Romans love their food with punch. With depth, with something they can't quite name but crave anyway. That crave, that's umami, and garum delivers it like a chariot on fire. Later, you follow the woman to a small stall at the market. She's ladling her homemade garum into little jugs, trading them for coins, olives, or favors. Even now, before the sauce gets fancy, it's got street value. Soldiers use it to make bland rations edible. Bakers mix it into bread dough. Doctors even prescribe it medicinally. Something about balancing bodily humors. Good luck with that. One stall over, a man hawks a rival brew, claiming his is aged in moonlight and marble. Total nonsense, but the crowd eats it up, sometimes literally. You duck as a kid runs by with a jar, shouting about dinner. The clay vessel leaks slightly. The sidewalk now glistens with slippery fish oil. Garum's everywhere. It seeps into conversation and culture. Roman graffiti even mentions it. I bought the best garum in Pompeii. Don't trust Lucius. His is like bathwater! Your stomach rumbles, part hunger, part apprehension. The woman who made the garum offers you a slice of bread dipped in her latest batch. It's salty, yes, but complex. Like anchovies met soy sauce and had a tangy, oceanic baby. You don't hate it. Back home, a scroll sits half open on a writing desk. It's a recipe collection, maybe even Apicius's. The ancient Roman equivalent of a celebrity chef. He swears by garum, uses it in desserts even. You wonder if this is genius or madness. Maybe both. Historians still debate just how widespread garum use was among the lower classes. But one thing's for sure, everyone knew what it was. Outside, a dog licks a spill near a broken jar. You watch it pause, sniff, then enthusiastically slurp the mess. See, even Roman mutts have refined palates. By now, the smell clings to you like a second skin. No soap's gonna fix that. But something else sticks to curiosity. How did this sludge of sea scraps go from peasant necessity to imperial indulgence? You're starting to suspect this sauce's story is just getting started. You wake up to the squawk of gulls and the low thrum of morning in the forum. Somewhere nearby, another pot of fish is already stewing in the sun. But today, things smell cleaner, more refined. You're in a different part of town now. Marble columns, private gardens, servants in pressed tunics. This isn't a street vendor's patch. This is where garum sheds its scrappy past and dons a toga of status. You drift into a domus belonging to a wealthy merchant. Let's call him Marcus. He's rotund, red-faced, and positively glowing with pride as he opens his pantry. Inside rows of sealed amphorae, each marked with wax seals and painted labels. These aren't homemade jars. These are brand garum imports from the coast of Hispania and North Africa. Premium stuff. You might even call it artisanal. If Romans had that word, Marcus insists you try a drizzle over boiled dormice. Yep, dormice. Tiny, stuffed, a little chewy, and apparently elevated to luxury with just a splash of his finest sauce. You chew, nod politely, and wonder if this is what ambition tastes like. Garum, once humble, has climbed the Roman social ladder faster than a freedman with a rich patron. Historians still argue whether this jump was driven by flavor alone or something sneakier, like elite gatekeeping. Because here's the twist: the same sauce, more or less, is still made in working class homes. But rich folks, they want theirs filtered, fermented longer, aged in imported cedar vats, and, ideally, expensive enough to brag about at dinner. Think of it like this: everyone can get coffee, but only some people drop 30 denarii on the amphora equivalent of a triple roasted Ethiopian single origin. As you wander deeper into Marcus's villa, you notice a wall fresco, bright and meticulous. In the background of the banquet scene, a servant's pouring garum from a tall neck jar over a roasted peacock. In the foreground, diners laugh, drink, and lean close, their bejeweled fingers stained with sauce. Garum isn't just food. It's fashion. One scroll tucked near the kitchen lays out a garum inventory alongside wine and olive oil. It lists brands like Floss, Garum, literally the flower of garum, praised by Pliny the Elder himself. You recognize a few names from the graffiti in Pompeii. It's almost like following influencers, except these influencers stink of anchovies. Marcus tells you, between burps, that some people now request different blends, thick ones for meat, light ones for seafood, even sweetened garum for desserts. You shudder, imagining a honeyed fish sauce cake. But he's dead serious. This is gourmet innovation, and he's not alone. Up in the Palatine Hill, senators compare sauce origins like vintages. This one's from Baetica, one says with a sniff. Tastes like it fermented under a moonless sky. Absolute nonsense, but he believes it. Taste and wealth go hand in greasy hand. But don't get too cozy in velvet banquets. Even high-end garum has its downside. The sauce is pungent enough to offend the gods, or at least neighbors. Rich villas invest in special storage rooms with thick stone walls just to trap the stink. A few Roman poets joke that garum should be stored 2 towns over, and yet, no one stops using it. Back on the streets, you notice something else like garum is starting to appear in gifts, in dares, even in wills. To my beloved niece Julia, one inscription reads, "I leave 4 jars of Tripolitanian garum and the recipe for pomegranate glazed duck." That's love? Or indigestion. You duck into a taberna, a casual Roman eatery. The owner is smug. He's got connections and a small jar of floss garum proudly displayed near the entrance like a Michelin star. He serves it with everything. Even wine, sometimes. A young patron dips his bread, eyes widen, and he yells across the room, "It tastes like the sea, and the gods made a baby!" Accurate. Still, not everyone's enchanted. Some philosophers scoff at the garum craze. Seneca rails against excess, warning that garum costs more than the fish it's made from. Others mutter that it's a distraction from virtue. But come on, virtue doesn't taste this good. As the sun sets, you follow Marcus to a private dinner party. The host unveils a dish of parrotfish steamed in fig leaves and doused in a new garum blend aged in amphorae lined with pitch. Everyone claps. Literally claps. One guest starts composing a haiku on the spot. You begin to suspect garum may have peaked or lost its mind. But one thing is certain, it's no longer just a sauce. It's a symbol, and every rich Roman from Gaul to Judea wants a piece of the fishy glory. Your sandals squelch as you step off the road and into a seaside settlement on the southern coast of Hispania. Modern day Spain, circa the 1st century CE. The air is thick with salt and something far less poetic rotting fish. It hits you like a wall. But for the locals here, this odor is liquid gold. Welcome to a garum factory town. You walk past rows of rectangular vats carved directly into the earth or built up with stone, each one brimming with silvery fish and coarse salt. Men with leathery skin and strong stomachs shovel mackerel, sardines, and anchovies into layered heaps. The sun does the rest. Fermentation begins almost immediately, helped along by the Mediterranean heat and, well, time. Lots of time. This is the industrial heart of the Garum Empire. Factories, known as Cetaria, line the coast in dozens of port towns, Belo Claudia, Gades, and Carthago Nova among them. You watch as barrels are sealed, stamped with producer marks, and stacked beside amphora, waiting to be shipped. Each jar has a little tag detailing the factory, the quality grade, and sometimes the name of the merchant. Early branding, you realize. Roman style. In this sticky little town, everyone's life revolves around fish sauce. Kids grow up learning to sort sardines by size. Housewives judge a potential match based on how well he can stir a vat without gagging. One woman proudly tells you her family's been fermenting fish for 3 generations. That's legacy, albeit a very smelly one. Not all garum is created equal. You learn about liquamen, a similar but slightly lower grade version, and alec, the solid fish paste left over after the liquid's drained. Rich Romans want only the clear, amber, hued top layer. The rest, that's for the taverns, the soldiers, and occasionally the livestock. Even pigs get garum scraps. Lucky them. Historians still argue whether these factories were state-run or private ventures. But one thing's clear, this is big business. You hear that some towns' entire economies hinge on this sauce. Tax records recovered centuries later will show garum producers making enough to rival small vineyards and olive estates. You meet a foreman named Gaius, who gives you the tour. He's missing half a finger. Fermentation lids are heavy, and wears a tunic permanently stained gray, blue from fish juice. Still, he's proud. Rome runs on garum, he says, wiping his brow. They pour it on everything but their sandals. As you follow him through the plant, you notice the logistics. Slaves haul salt from nearby mines. Fishermen row out daily, casting nets just offshore. Potters mold and fire thousands of amphorae in kilns, belching smoke behind the hill. Even the clay has to be just right. Too porous, and your fish sauce leaks. Too heavy, and it breaks in transit. Entire industries hum together just to ship sauce to someone's fancy table in Gaul. Gaius gestures toward a freshly sealed amphora. That one's gonna Britannia, he says. Poor bastards. Cold and wet, but at least they'll eat well. You both laugh. There's something weirdly elegant about the system. It's waste not, want not. Heads, guts, fins. Nothing is tossed. Every part of the fish gets transformed, either into sauce, paste, or compost for the next year's crops. It's a brutal efficiency, but it works. As night falls, you stay to watch a little ceremony. Workers gather around a vat that's finished fermenting. A priestess from the nearby temple of Neptune offers a libation, some wine and a pinch of herbs, to bless the batch. You catch whispers that a dolphin may have accidentally ended up in the mix. More flavor? Someone jokes. The others groan, but you wonder. Some texts do mention exotic garum variants containing everything from sea urchins to, you guessed it, dolphin. Historians still debate if that was real or just ancient culinary trolling. You spend the night in a worker's hut. The mattress is stuffed with straw and fish scales. Outside, the vats continue to burble gently, like a cauldron of history. As you drift off, you realize this isn't just a food factory. It's a machine. A smelly, relentless machine powering the diets and bank accounts of an empire. You clamber aboard a creaking Roman merchant ship at dawn, the sea stretching out before you in a sheet of silver. The deck is slippery with brine. The sails billow above, and you're hemmed in by rows upon rows of tightly packed amphorae. All of them sealed, sloshing faintly, and filled to the neck with garum. The ship's headed north, part of an ancient shipping route that moves this precious cargo from the coastal factories of Hispania and North Africa to hungry markets across the Mediterranean. The captain, a wary man with sunburned skin, and a cough that sounds like dry rope, tells you the garum jars are strapped tight not just for storms, but to keep pirates from smelling the cargo before seeing it. Because yes, even sea bandits know the worth of fermented fish sauce. The amphorae are wedged with straw and olive branches to keep them from shattering. Still, one tips over mid-journey, releasing a gush of golden, brown liquid across the deck. You and the crew spend the next hour trying not to gag as the ship takes on a new, deeply unpleasant perfume. As the coastline shrinks behind you, the scale of the garum trade becomes clear. You're part of a massive distribution network. Ships like this one leave daily from ports like Gades and Leptis Magna, headed to Rome, Massilia, Carthage, Alexandria, even as far as Londinium in the wet, misty north. Wherever the empire stretches, garum jars follow. At a harbor stop in Ostia, Rome's bustling port city, you help unload. Slaves and dock workers groan as they heave the jars onto carts, each marked with red inscriptions noting the sauce type, origin, and producer. Some even have little poems. You spot one that reads, "From sea to sun to tongue divine, taste the gods in brine." Romans, always dramatic. Historians still argue just how integral garum was to these shipping routes. Was it the cargo, or just one of many? But there's no denying its presence. Garum jars turn up in shipwrecks all across the seafloor. One particularly famous wreck, found near Antibes, had over 10,000 amphorae. That's not seasoning. That's empire in liquid form. In the city, merchants await the new shipment eagerly. They haggle over the freshest jars, favoring those still warm from the sun. One shopkeeper even sniffs each jar before buying, like a fishy sommelier. You trail a jar as it's rolled down a cobbled alley, up 3 flights of stairs, and handed to a plump cook in a smoky tavern. She uncorks it immediately and pours it into a bubbling stew. The scent chases you out the door. But trade isn't always smooth sailing. At one port in Sicily, you overhear rumors of garum fraud. Lesser sauces being passed off as premium blends. Knockoff garum. The horror. There's talk of ship captains colluding with dodgy merchants to relabel cheaper product. You scribble the phrase, "saucy corruption," in your imaginary travel journal. Even emperors get involved. Tax records show that garum imports are tracked, sometimes even taxed separately based on quality. It's that valuable. One Roman official boasts of catching a merchant sneaking untaxed jars past customs by hiding them inside wine shipments. No one drinks wine that smells like fish. He laughs. It gave them away. You're pretty sure that's also how horror stories begin. There's a system of roads, stone, laid and expertly engineered, leading from the ports to cities across the interior. You hop onto a wagon headed for Pompeii, bouncing alongside clay jars cradled in hay. Along the way, you pass roadside inns with garum tastings, sort of like ancient food trucks, except much, much smellier. One innkeeper insists on showing you his prized jar, unopened for 3 years. Still perfect, he says, aged like a dream. You take a whiff and momentarily lose the will to live, he beams. And it's not just sauce moving along these roads. Garum's popularity spur-side trades olive oil for blending, herbs for flavoring, even special amphorae stoppers made from beeswax and pitch. A whole satellite economy exists just to support the fish sauce trade. Who knew the secret to Roman economic growth was pickled sardines? By the time you reach Pompeii, you feel like you've personally earned a cut of the empire's garum profits. Your clothes reek. Your shoes are crusted with brine. But your understanding, crystal clear. Garum didn't just travel with the empire, it helped fund, feed, and flavor it. You wipe the sweat from your brow as you ascend marble steps into the heart of imperial Rome. The din of street hawkers fades behind you, replaced by the genteel murmur of togas swishing and goblets clinking. Tonight, you're crashing an elite banquet. A cena, hosted by a wealthy patrician who just so happens to be friends with a senator who is friends with someone in the emperor's court. Good luck finding the seating chart. You're ushered through a colonnaded courtyard filled with perfumed air and pomegranate blossoms. And there, laid out on silver platters, under flickering oil lamps, is Rome's finest cuisine: peacock tongues, flamingo thighs, even boiled ostrich eggs dyed with saffron. But the real star, that familiar, amber, glinted potion ladled from a crystal vessel by a servant who looks absolutely dead inside. It's garum. Not just any garum. This is the emperor's favorite blend, said to have fermented on the very cliffs of Baetica and stirred hourly by a virgin. Historians still argue whether that was a real requirement or just upper-class marketing nonsense. The host, let's call him Lucullus the Younger, raises a goblet in welcome. He's flushed with pride and expensive Falernian wine. Tonight, he says, we eat as gods do. Drenched in flavor, drunk on tradition. Everyone claps, except the one senator quietly inspecting his sauce for impurities like it's the Dead Sea Scrolls. You take your seat on a cushion and lean in. The dishes arrive in waves, each glistening with garum, infused dressings or simmered in sauce reductions. Stuffed dormice in honeyed garum, goose liver soaked in fermented fish. Even the dessert, a baked pear tart, gets a garum glaze that somehow works. Sort of. Maybe. You stop thinking and just chew. Emperors aren't just eating this stuff, they're obsessed. Tiberius reportedly carried garum on campaign, like it was hot sauce. Pliny the Elder mentions that one jug of top-tier garum could cost up to 500 sesterces, enough to feed a family of 4 for a month. Imagine explaining that to your accountant. But garum wasn't just a flavor enhancer. It was political grease. Imagine offering a senator a bottle of premium garum as a bribe. Subtle, salty, and deliciously corrupt. A gift of sauce could open doors, secure contracts, even curry favor with the imperial kitchen staff. That's right, who fed the emperor held immense soft power. And they always had garum on hand. During the meal, you notice that no two guests have quite the same garum. The host has arranged small clay dishes filled with regional variants. Lusitanian garum with a smoky edge, Alexandrian sauce laced with cinnamon, and a mysterious black garum that the hostess claims was made using sea wolves. So you decide not to ask. There's quiet competition at the table. One guest brags about owning a sealed amphora from the time of Augustus, still pungent. Another sniffs and counters. But mine has dolphin marrow, truly divine. The group gasps. Someone fans themselves. Dolphin again. Why is it always dolphin? You get the feeling that garum is less about taste now and more about tastefulness. The sauce is a flex, a subtle way to say, I have power, wealth, and the connections to buy my condiments across continents. Of course, not everyone at the table is thrilled. One philosopher in a two. Short tunic grumbles that garum corrupts the palate, that real Romans should enjoy the purity of boiled lentils and virtue. No one listens. They're too busy dipping roast hare into a garum reduction with a side of fig jam. You slip into the kitchen where the real magic happens. It's chaos. Servants shouting, flames roaring, amphorae being cracked open with wet thuds. The head cook shows you a scroll of flavor pairings. Garum pairs well with honey, he says, and with citrus, and, if you're brave, with fermented cabbage. You take a whiff and nearly pass out. On a shelf sits a locked wooden box. Inside, the cook whispers is a jar of an ultra rare garum from Mauritania, aged for 10 years. The emperor himself weeps when he tastes it. He says, "You believe him. It smells like regret and salted legend." As the feast winds down, guests recline and loosen their belts. The host proposes a toast to Rome, to fish, and to whatever genius first decided to rot them in a jar. Everyone cheers. A slave accidentally knocks over an amphora. No one minds. The marble floor will smell like mackerel for weeks, but who cares? You step out into the cool Roman night, belly full and head spinning. The streets are quieter now. Somewhere, a dog barks. The Tiber murmurs in the distance, and floating from every kitchen window is the unmistakable tang of garum. In imperial Rome, even the shadows are seasoned. Morning breaks over a bustling Roman marketplace, and you're already elbow deep in scrolls and ledgers. Today isn't about flavor. It's about finance. Because behind every ladle of garum at an emperor's banquet is a whole chain of coin tax and bureaucracy that smells only slightly less fishy than the sauce itself. You've found your way into the office of a publicanus, one of Rome's tax contractors. His name's Publius, and he's got ink-stained fingers, a furrowed brow, and an amphora of cheap garum tucked under his desk for emergencies. He welcomes you in without looking up, grumbling about tariffs and dock delays. Welcome to the business end of garum. Here's the thing, by the early empire, garum has become so commercially important that the state can't ignore it. Cities levy port duties on shipments. Local magistrates impose luxury taxes on premium blends. And in some provinces, garum's production is taxed at the source, each jar tagged and tallied before it even hits a cart. You flip through a tax record detailing a single shipment, 140 amphorae of floss garum, assessed at 2 sesterti per jar, plus transport fees and dock duties. That's enough revenue to repair a road, or bribe 3 low-level senators, depending on your priorities. Historians still argue whether garum taxes were a key part of imperial budgeting or just a bonus for enterprising provinces. But the records don't lie. Garum brought in serious coin. Cities like Pompeii and Herculaneum had entire offices dedicated to tracking sauce sales. You picture a poor clerk trying to keep a straight face while scribbling 4 jars of dolphin, infused brine, into the books. Publius explains the economics like this. You have the fishers, the fermenters, the amphora makers, the haulers, the sellers. All taxed. Then the sauce itself, luxury tax, export tax, vendor fee. It's a fishy gold mine. And then there's vectigal, the Roman version of customs duty. Garum crossing provincial lines could be taxed again, especially if it was bound for elite markets. That's why some merchants cut deals with local governors, offering samples. In exchange for smooth passage, very official, you visit a merchant next. Julius, who owns a garum shop near the Subura district. He walks you through his daily numbers, and wow, it's dizzying. I buy at 3, sell at 10, he says. The elite want prestige. The poor just want salt. He's even hired a young boy to shout slogans outside the shop like a walking commercial. Flos garum. So good. The gods smell it first! You trail Julius to the docks, where he inspects a new shipment and slips a coin pouch to the dockmaster. Expedited customs, he winks. The dockmaster winks back. You suddenly feel like you're in a mafia drama, except the contraband is fermented fish. Later, in a poor district, you spot garum being sold from a cart. No labels, no seals, just a greasy old jug and a ladle. Unofficial? Whispers Julius. Probably taxed once. Maybe. But they're everywhere. You watch as the vendor mixes a thinner sauce with water to stretch it. Half garum, half street fountain. People still line up. Rome's financial relationship with garum isn't just about direct taxes. There are indirect gains too. The demand for amphorae fuels pottery workshops. Salt mines expand. Shipping companies grow. The whole network pulses with coin, all because some genius left fish guts in the sun. Even the military gets involved. You read a report indicating that Roman legions stationed in far-off outposts received garum as part of their rations. And if it's part of a soldier's pay,
Guess what?
the state foots the bill. Thousands of jars moving across the empire under government contract. That evening, you attend a town council meeting in a provincial city. The topic, whether to invest in building a local garum plant to increase revenue. Some councilmen argue it'll attract trade and taxes. Others worry it'll attract flies. One suggests a compromise, build it, but downwind. Everyone agrees. Democracy. You end your day standing before a city treasury, carved in stone with inscriptions honoring the benefactors who funded its columns with fish sauce money. Literally. One reads, "To the glory of Neptune, and to Garum of Gades, which built this wall." Poetic. As you walk away, you realize you've followed the scent of garum straight into the Roman economy. This sauce didn't just flavor dinner. It flavored empire. It wasn't just seasoning, it was structure. And somehow, it always led to someone getting richer. Usually the guy who held the ladle last. You drift through a narrow alley in Pompeii, its walls alive with scribbled slogans and crude drawings. Most are political or romantic, but more than a few are garum related. One particularly bold bit of graffiti reads, "Emilius makes garum so weak, my cat refused it." Another praises a rival, garum of Scorus. Flavor fit for Jupiter himself? You chuckle. Welcome to the ancient world's earliest form of brand wars. You stop before a small storefront bearing a painted sign with a fish, a jar, and a laurel wreath. Beneath it, elegant red lettering declares, "Flos Garum of Marcus Scorus." You've arrived at one of the most prestigious garum brands in the Roman world. Scorus didn't just sell fish sauce. He sold an identity, and he did it with flair. Inside, jars line the shelves like perfume bottles in a luxury boutique. Each is labeled with origin, flavor notes, and quality grade. Some even boast mini biographies, cured in Vatican sun, under strict supervision. The top shelf gleams with limited edition amphorae embossed with silver foil and sealed in wax. You half expect to see a sample station and a pretentious sales assistant offering notes of tuna and a finish of ancient oak. Marcus Scorus himself, if he's around, is a bit of a legend. Historians still debate whether he was truly Rome's most successful garum tycoon or just the best self-promoter. What's undeniable is his reach. His family's name appears on amphorae found as far away as Gaul and Palestine. His factory, discovered in Pompeii, was massive. His ads, relentless. Even on public benches and bathhouse walls, you're pretty sure someone once chiseled, "Scorus was here." Bring garum into a latrine. Branding in ancient Rome wasn't just clever, it was crucial. You learn that fake garum, cheap knockoffs, were a huge problem. Vendors would water down sauces, forge labels, even reuse old jars. One clever merchant was caught painting over amphorae, with wax to mimic Scorus's mark. He was fined and flogged. But honestly, that's just good hustle. You step back into the street and spot another vendor, hawking his own blend. Titus Triple, aged garum. No scales. No shame! He catches your eye. Want a taste. Better than Scorus and half the price. You dip a piece of bread in and sample it. Not bad. Definitely fishy. Definitely salty. Possibly worth writing a mixed review. This sauce snobbery isn't just about taste. It's about class. The elites swear by name brands, order specific regions, and critique like sommeliers. But working class folks, they go for price and punch. The divide is stark at a senator's dinner. Sauce is a status symbol. In the popinay, or taverns, it's a table condiment next to the vinegar jug. Still, the influence of branding stretches everywhere. You see garum used in wedding banquets, funeral feasts, even religious festivals. The labels matter. A high priestess wouldn't be caught dead pouring alley. Market sauce on her sacrificial goose. It has to be certified, blessed, and probably fermented with him, singing virgins. Back in a quieter corner of town, you enter a garum bottling workshop. It's not glamorous. Mostly workers with sore backs and salt, cracked hands. But what catches your attention is the amphora painting station. Here, artisans brush bright ink onto jar necks, replicating the signature of famous producers. Some work for real brands, some not so much. One man winks at you as he signs FG Scorus with a flourish. They'll never know, he says, unless they taste it. His apprentice shrugs. It's fish. It's salty. They'll live. You learn that jars were often recycled. After all, amphorae are expensive. That led to a side industry of label scraping, rewaxing, and relabeling. Romans were green, but mostly for profit. Even in advertising, garum was ahead of its time. You see slogans chiseled into stone, genuine garum, for a mouth like Mars, and 3 times filtered, never regretted. There are even attempts at jingles, short rhythmic verses meant to stick in the mind like fish between teeth. At one point, you find yourself watching a street performer reenact the legend of the Golden Garum. It's part mythology, part sales pitch, and all ridiculous. The crowd laughs. A child in the front clutches a mini amphora toy. Merchandising? Of course. As the day ends, you sit on a warm stone wall, watching a pair of garum merchants bicker over territory. One accuses the other of sabotage, claiming he planted anchovy bones in his barrels. The other counters by accusing him of bribing amphora painters. It's messy. It's petty. It's ancient marketing at its finest. You realize garum wasn't just a sauce. It was identity. It was power. It was proof that even 2,000 years ago, humans were absolutely, gloriously ridiculous about their condiments. You're standing under the blazing Hispania sun again, and this time, you're here for the gooey details, not the politics, not the prestige. Today, you're learning exactly how garum gets its funk. Microbe by microbe, gut by gut. You start at a Ceteria, a fish sauce factory not far from the coastline. The vats are open, air stone basins, each filled with alternating layers of fish and sea salt. Sardines, mackerel, and anchovies are the usual suspects. Someone dumps in a fresh bucket. The smell hits immediately. Sharp, briny, almost warm. You crouch beside a vat and peer in. It's not pretty, and it's not quick. These vats sit, sometimes for months, as the sun ferments the contents into sauce. There's no fire, no stirring. Just time, heat, and bacteria doing what they do best. Breaking stuff down. The science behind garum is funky in every sense. The salt kills off the bad microbes and lets halophilic bacteria take over. The kind that love salt. They munch on proteins, especially glutamates, and release compounds that tickle your umami receptors. It's ancient biochemistry. You're basically watching protein hydrolysis in action. Yum. Historians still argue over the precise fermentation method. Some sources say the fish were left whole. Others insist the guts were removed first. Some vats might have been stirred daily. Others sealed completely. One recipe calls for the innards of mackerel with blood removed, while another cheerfully suggests, use the whole fish, you may Neptune sort it out. You meet a grizzled old garum master named Vibius. He leans on a paddle and spits casually into the sand. You want it strong? He says. You leave it open. You want it soft? He gestures to a sealed jar. No air. No sun. Just patience. His teeth are dark, probably from a lifetime of tasting his own brew. Vibius offers you a ladle of liquid pulled from the very top of a finished vat. It's golden brown, translucent, with tiny oil bubbles dancing on the surface. You brace yourself and sip. Oh, it's intense, salty, sure, but also rich, deep, almost nutty. It doesn't taste like fish exactly. It tastes like everything fishy was ever supposed to be. Concentrated, purified, and aged in divine disapproval. Some say garum contains amino acids like glutamic acid, which trigger the savory sensation we call umami. Others claim it includes peptides and organic acids that mellow its sharpness over time. One odd detail: lab tests on ancient garum jars show very little actual fish residue. The filtration process, it seems, was legit. And here's where things get quirky. Roman garum wasn't always fish, only. You stumble on a scroll in a nearby villa listing experimental ingredients: sea urchins, cuttlefish ink, even roasted eel heads. One footnote adds, dolphin, in small amounts, makes the sauce sing. Still with the dolphin. You learn about the alec too? The chunky sludge left after garum is drained. It's packed with protein and often used by the poor, kind of like spreading chunky peanut butter, except it's made of anchovy mud. At one point you assist with skimming the top layer of a vat. It's a delicate process done with shallow ladles and practiced hands. Too deep, and you stir the sediments. Too shallow, and you miss the good stuff. It's like siphoning the top off a miracle, and trying not to gag while doing it. You hear whispers that some factories used specific woods to ferment their fish. Pine for aroma, cedar for antiseptic properties. Others added herbs, thyme, oregano, coriander seeds. A traveling merchant once boasted of rose-infused garum. Sounds romantic. Smells like floral doom. Later, you visit a storage room where amphorae of finished garum are curing in the cool shade. The vessels are corked, waxed, and sometimes double sealed with pitch. A few are marked with X for extra strength. You pop one open. It hisses slightly. Living sauce. Garum's microbial complexity rivals wine or cheese. Yet here's the kicker, it's made outside, in the sun. Surrounded by flies. In clay pits. No gloves. No thermometers. Just fish, salt, and superstition. And somehow, it works. You find a fringe recipe etched on a wall. Take tuna belly, salted thrice, chant Neptune's name at moonrise. Bury in sand. Wait 100 days. Is it science or sorcery? Historians still debate. As you leave, the garum master calls after you. You want to make your own. Start with a smell you'll never forget. You already have. It's in your clothes, your hair, your soul. But you're starting to get it now. Garum wasn't an accident. It was engineered, carefully, creatively, and with a nose for balance. A symphony of salt and time. The wind shifts as you cross the sands of North Africa, following the scent trail of something familiar, yet different. Garum's cousins. Because here's the twist, Rome didn't invent fish sauce. They just industrialized it. Across the empire, you begin to notice regional rifts, variations of that salty, fermented essence, each with its own backstory, aroma, and fan base. You arrive in Leptis Magna, a bustling coastal city in what is now Libya. This place hums with trade, diversity, and culinary creativity. In the central market, you spot jars labeled Murray. At first glance, it looks like garum, but you quickly learn this one's made not from fish, but from fermented barley and salt, something like a proto-soy sauce. It's darker, richer, and has a nutty tang that garum lacks. People here use both, sometimes blending them in stews, sometimes arguing loudly about which is better. Historians still argue whether Murray was a supplement or a full replacement for garum in some North African households. Judging by the passion in this marketplace, the debate hasn't stopped in 2,000 years. Further east, you travel to Alexandria, Egypt. This is where Greek, Roman, and Egyptian traditions swirl together. Here, you taste a sauce called oxygarum, garum blended with vinegar and herbs. It's sharper, more acidic, and used like a table dressing. One chef drizzles it over grilled Nile tilapia with coriander. Another stirs it into lentils. You cough politely after your first bite. It's punchy, but undeniably alive with flavor. While lingering in a kitchen garden behind a temple, a priest offers you a local variant made with mullet and pomegranate juice. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. The gods like options. You don't know whether to be impressed or afraid. Out in the ports of Judea, you find jars labeled with Hebrew inscriptions. Some kosher, some clearly not. It turns out fish sauce sparked debates, even among ancient religious communities. Some groups used it freely. Others rejected it unless it was made from specific fish and prepared with proper rituals. One scholar you meet points to Leviticus with fish, stained fingers, trying to explain which blends count. You smile and pretend to understand, but all you really know is that this particular jar smells less aggressive than usual, and you're grateful. Then you head north, toward Greece. The Greeks had their own sauce long before Rome's rise. Gyros, the likely root word for garum itself. Greek fish sauce tends to be thinner, and often mixed into vinaigrettes or honey glazes. At a mountaintop villa overlooking the Aegean, a cook brushes a sweet, savory mixture onto lamb skewers as if painting a masterpiece. You try one, it's divine. You ask for the recipe. He laughs and tells you to find a time machine. Back on the road, you meet a caravan from the east, traders bringing spices, textiles, and rumors. One man unrolls a scroll detailing fish sauces made in India and beyond. In the east, they ferment shrimp, crab, even squid, he says. They call it ntnac in some lands, or nample. Your ears perk up. Different words, different oceans. Same funky heart. And though these sauces will evolve separately, the resemblance is uncanny. Fermentation, salt, seafood, some flavors are just inevitable. You pause in a small Syrian village, where women stir a local sauce made from dried fish and tamarind. One old woman hands you a cup. It helps the body stay strong, she insists. You take a sip. It's oddly sweet with a smoky finish, somewhere between garum and chutney. Your stomach rumbles, either from enlightenment or regret. Too early to say. Back in Rome, you find all these variants sold side by side. There's a whole district now. Rows of stalls, each hawking their version of fermented genius. The labels read like wine vintages, Phoenician style, Alexandrian blend, Athenian twist. Some vendors pour samples. Others guard their blends like family secrets. One philosopher passes by, muttering about cultural decay and culinary confusion. In my youth, garum tasted like Rome. He scoffs. You raise an eyebrow. It still does? The vendor replies. It just also tastes like everywhere else. And that's the point, isn't it? Garum didn't just unite the empire by trade. It stitched together tastes, traditions, and tongues. From the Atlantic to the Euphrates, people spoke different languages, but shared the same salty splash on their bread. You sit on a marble step with a loaf in your lap, dipping chunks into 3 jars at once. Egyptian, Greek, Judean. Each one is a story. Each one is survival. And together, they taste like history in real time. You're back in Rome, but this time, you're not in the shadow of columns or silk-draped villas. You're seated on a rough bench in a smoky little popina, a working-class tavern where garum's role shifts from status symbol to survival staple. The room's filled with noise. Dice clatter on stone, someone sings off key, a child tries to catch a rat under a stool. At every table sits a clay bowl of something warm and stew-like. The common denominator, a ladle or 2 of garum mixed in. Not the fancy stuff, not the Scorus brand. This is liquamen, a thinner, saltier version, often homemade or skimmed from lower fermentation vats. No frills, just funk. Your neighbor, a stonemason named Quintus, scoops up a hunk of barley bread and dips it into his bowl. This, he says, tastes like home. You take a bite, it's hearty, earthy, a bit fishy. But you get it. This isn't about impressing anyone. It's about flavor, calories, and getting through another day on your feet. As you eat, you start to see the class divide play out through sauce. In elite homes, garum comes filtered, aged, paired with pheasant tongue and honeyed figs. Here, it comes in battered pots beside lentils and cabbage. Same basic ingredient. Very different vibe. Historians still argue how evenly garum was distributed across social classes. Was it truly ubiquitous, or just common enough to feel universal? In truth, it likely depended on geography and budget. But here, in the city, it's clear even the poor expect a dash of the sea in their stew. You wander through the streets and catch the scent drifting from windows, cellar kitchens, even bathhouses. A vendor on the corner is selling fried chickpeas dusted with garum powder. Another mixes garum with wine to make a surprisingly drinkable tonic. You try it and immediately regret it. An acquired taste. The vendor shrugs. Down a narrow alley, you find a woman stirring a pot over a fire. She's feeding her family of 6 with a stew of root vegetables, stale bread, and 2 spoonfuls of garum. It makes everything better, she says. Even turnips. You nod. She's not wrong. Later, you visit a small apartment complex, an insula. where 3 families share a kitchen. You help one of them prepare dinner millet porridge with herbs, oil, and a splash of thick garum. The kids wrinkle their noses at the smell, but dig in greedily once it's served. We can't afford meat every week, the father says, but garum makes the millet feel like meat. That's the magic, right there. Then you step into a wealthier home, not elite, just comfortable. The family's enjoying roasted lamb with pepper and garum reduction. Same ingredient, higher quality, better presentation. You notice the guests compliment the sauce more than the meat. So smooth, one says. Imported from Carthage, the host beams, you smile. In the Roman world, garum isn't just a flavor. It's a social signal. Yet, for all the divide, garum still links everyone. From senator to slave, people pour it over bread, mix it into soup, and sneak it into leftovers. It's an equalizer in a deeply unequal society. You pass a market stall where a woman is bartering with a fishmonger. She's not buying fresh fish. She wants the heads and guts. She's going to make her own batch at home. Not proper garum, she admits, but close enough. Just don't tell my mother-in-law. You admire the hustle. Even in prisons, you hear that garum was occasionally smuggled in, both as seasoning and as comfort food. A little flask hidden in bread. A dab on plain gruel. It's humanity, bottled. You stop at a small shrine on your way home. Someone has left offerings bread, a little oil, and yes, a clay jar with a few spoonfuls of garum. The gods eat too. As night falls, you return to the Popina. Quintus is still there, nursing a drink and mopping up the last of his meal. He claps you on the back. Tell your fancy friends, he says. We made garum cool first. You raise your cup. It's easy to laugh, but he's not wrong. For all its journey through palace halls and banquet tables, garum began here, among the kitchens of the people. And long after the last emperor, long after the villas have crumbled and the palaces turn to dust, someone, somewhere, will still be stirring a pot with a splash of salt, fish, and memory. The morning air is heavy with incense as you step into a Roman temple courtyard. Marble columns cast long shadows, and somewhere nearby, a bronze wind chime clinks in rhythm with the breeze. It's a sacred space, still, solemn. And yes, even here, garum makes an appearance. You trail behind a small procession of priests, carrying baskets of fruit, loaves of bread, jugs of wine, and one amphora of fish sauce. It seems odd, doesn't it? You'd expect wine for Bacchus or grain for Ceres. But garum, turns out, even the gods had a taste for umami. At the altar, the priest uncorks the jar and pours a careful stream over a roasted offering. The scent rises, a mix of charred meat and fermented fish, and everyone around nods gravely. This isn't about dinner. It's about ritual. Historians still argue how often garum featured in Roman religious life. Was it a standard part of sacrifice, a regional quirk, or something specific to certain deities? The evidence is scattered but unmistakable. Temple altars, grave goods, even recipe scrolls include mentions of garum used in ceremonial feasts or libations. Later, at a smaller shrine to Mercury, the god of trade, you spot an offering jar placed beneath the god's statue. Inside is a small wedge of cheese, a few coins, and a drizzle of garum. A thank you, perhaps, from a merchant whose shipment made it through a storm. You imagine Mercury rolling his divine eyes but accepting the gift. After all, it's expensive. In the necropolis, the graveyard, you find garum again. Here, it's less celebratory. You see it poured as a funerary libation, the scent meant to reach the dead, and maybe even nourish them in the afterlife. One stone marker reads, "To Marcus, who loved his fish sauce more than his wine." A fitting tribute. A woman kneeling at a grave breaks off a piece of bread and dips it in a garum-drenched offering bowl. She eats half and leaves the rest. For both of us, she murmurs. The line between ritual and memory blurs. You stumble across a strange rite performed by a secretive sect, possibly a cult of Neptune. Hooded figures chant softly, anointing each other with diluted garum as a symbol of oceanic connection. The smell is overpowering, the mood intense. A member later explains, the sea gives life. Garum is proof. You nod slowly, trying not to inhale too deeply. Some scholars you meet suggest that garum's role in rituals wasn't just spiritual, it was practical. It preserved meats for feasts, flavored dull grains for mass gatherings, and served as a shared sensory signal. A smell everyone recognized, a taste everyone understood. In a religion so deeply tied to daily life, food and faith were inseparable. You attend a wedding feast where garum is used in a special sauce symbolizing unity. 2 ingredients, fish and salt, becoming one. The bride jokes that if her new husband doesn't appreciate garum, it's grounds for annulment. Laughter follows. The jar is passed. Even during childbirth, one midwife tells you a dab of garum might be mixed with herbal paste and applied to the baby's lips. To bless the tongue, she says, to ensure the child speaks wisely and eats well. You try not to think about how salty that baby's first taste of life must be. Not every use is so wholesome. You hear whispers that garum is sometimes poured into enemy graves to taint them, symbolically spoiling their memory. One rival senator was famously insulted when a bottle of off-brand garum was found smashed on his family tomb. In Rome, even your afterlife could be branded or defiled. As twilight approaches, you witness a quiet domestic ritual. A grandmother prepares a simple stew, then sets aside a portion and pours a little garum on top. She places it at a home altar, beside a tiny figurine of Lares, the household gods. She whispers something in Latin, then resumes stirring the family pot. Religion and routine, side by side. You realize then that garum wasn't just a condiment or a trade good. It was woven into Roman life at every level. It seasoned prayers, flavored memories, and anointed the thresholds between worlds. You leave the temple district in the gathering dusk, nose tingling with salt and smoke, ears echoing with chants. Somewhere behind you, another priest pours another libation. Somewhere ahead, another cook dips a ladle into a sacred jar. And overhead, the gods, if they're paying attention, probably catch a whiff and smile. You slip into a side alley near the forum, drawn by whispers and a clattering of broken pottery. There, in the flickering torchlight, a group of traders huddles over a stash of amphora. One of them uncorks a jar and winces. Too much salt, he mutters. Another dips a finger and grimaces. They cut this with seawater. Again, you've stumbled into the fishiest drama in ancient Rome. Garum fraud. In a world where garum can sell for a month's wages, the temptation to cheat the system runs strong. You learn quickly that not all jars are what they claim to be. Some vendors dilute their sauce with brine or vinegar. Others use old, reboiled fish scraps to stretch the yield. Worst of all, selling alec, the chunky sludge left over after the good stuff skimmed off as first quality garum. It's like selling used coffee grounds as espresso. Criminal. One official, a short man with a scroll and a scowl, explains that he's part of a cohort's Urbane squad. Think Roman food inspectors meets low-budget detectives. He shows you a broken amphora with a forged Scorus label. Amateur work, he sniffs. The real ink doesn't smear. He dips a strip of linen into the sauce and holds it to his nose. Too pungent. They fermented this too fast. He gestures to a tablet where fines are carefully recorded. Counterfeit sauce could mean heavy penalties. Sometimes jail, sometimes exile, depending on whose reputation you tarnished. Historians still debate how common garum fraud was versus how often it was prosecuted, but the archaeological record shows plenty of reused jars and mismatched stamps. In a warehouse near the Porta Capena, you find a stash of amphorae scraped clean of old labels just waiting for new paint. Recycling or deception? Depends on the seller and the buyer's nose. You meet a disgruntled merchant named Flavius who claims his business was ruined by one bad batch. I trusted a supplier in Mauritania, he says. Turns out he sold me eel paste. Eel, he spits on the cobblestones. Do you know what happens when senators taste eel paste at a funeral feast? They taste lawsuits. Scandals ripple through society like oil across water. One senator publicly denounces a garum brand after getting food poisoning. Another is rumored to have lost his position after gifting the emperor a jar that turned out to be fermented catfish. You didn't even know catfish lived in the Mediterranean. Even consumers fight back. You see graffiti in the Sabura that reads, "Beware the garum of Decimus, made from sewer fish." Beneath it, someone else has added, "Still better than Titus. Tastes like regret." You laugh. Then you see someone painting over a jar's stamp in the shadows and realize how common this really is. You drop in on a garum producer trying to clean up the industry. Claudia, a sharp-eyed widow who runs a small but reputable operation. She shows you her storage room, each jar sealed with stamped wax, certified by a local guild. "No shortcuts," she says. "My sauce ferments for 90 days, filtered twice, and sealed by hand." You try a sample. It's rich, complex, oddly smooth. She beams. "We even add bay leaf. Keeps the flies off." Claudia's biggest enemy. Knockoff artists who copy her labels and flood the market with watery junk. She's filed formal complaints with the Aediles, Rome's market regulators. But they're too busy inspecting bad wine. She sighs. No one dies from bad garum. You're not so sure. There's even talk of garum mules, men who carry high quality sauce in disguised jars to elite buyers who want the good stuff but don't want their rivals to know. You hear about a noblewoman who hired her own garum taster, an ex-gladiator with a golden palate and a tragic backstory. He swears he can detect region, age, and fish species in a single drop. You don't challenge him. One night, you attend a clandestine tasting party where guests sample illegal blends from banned regions. Garum from Corsica, a smoky variant from Crete, even a peppered sauce said to be laced with psychoactive herbs. "Just a dash," the host giggles. You try it? You see stars? You ask for another sip? The scandal isn't just among humans. You find a clay dog figurine dug up near Herculaneum with a garum jar at its feet. The theory? It was buried with counterfeit sauce as a curse. "May your house smell like rotting eel forever." One inscription reads, "Brutal." As you leave the alleyways of deception, you realize something strange. All this chaos, fraud, flavor, fallout, proves one thing: garum matters. It's valuable, vital, desired. And wherever something is truly loved, there will be people trying to fake it. So, you tighten the lid on your own jar, label it with care, and try not to think too hard about what's really inside. After all, in ancient Rome, even truth was salted and left to ferment. The wind shifts with a melancholy tinge as you step over the crumbling remains of what was once a proud garum factory. Vats lie cracked and dry. Walls are charred or sun, bleached to bone, white. The air no longer hums with salt and fermentation. Only silence, broken by the occasional lizard skittering over broken tile. You're walking through the ashes of an industry that once seasoned an empire. This is the 3rd century CE, and things aren't looking great for Rome. You begin your journey in Bello Claudia, a coastal town that was once a garum juggernaut. But now, the sea still laps against the shore, but trade has slowed to a trickle. Many factories have closed. A few are being dismantled stone by stone to build fortifications. Pirates have returned to the waters, and civil unrest simmers across the provinces. People are too busy surviving to flavor their stews. Historians still debate what exactly caused the garum industry to decline. Was it economic collapse, barbarian invasions, disease, or just changing tastes? Likely a tangled combo. But one thing is clear: as the Roman Empire begins to falter, so does the sauce that flavored its every corner. You ride inland toward Pompeii's ruins, frozen in ash and heartbreak since 79 CE. Among the wreckage, archaeologists would later find intact garum shops, complete with amphorae still sealed. They even recovered scrawled advertisements, like "Best fish sauce in town," rendered meaningless in a single volcanic breath. Time capsules of a lost condiment culture. Elsewhere, the evidence is more gradual. You hear from a merchant in Rome that his garum deliveries now arrive sporadically, often half empty or spoiled. The roads aren't safe, he says, and the fish are smaller every year. He's switched to vinegar and herbs. Still sharp, he shrugs, but not the same. In the northern provinces, you find Romanized Britons turning to local ingredients. Fermented barley, wild herbs, salted meats. The garum amphorae sit unused in storage, covered in dust. Too expensive, says a tavern keeper. Too foreign. You get the sense that, for the first time in centuries, Rome sauce no longer tastes like home. Even the amphorae change. Where once they were stamped with elaborate labels and provenance, now they're crude, unmarked. The artisans who once painted logos are making roof tiles or grave markers. The prestige has vanished. No one brags about garum anymore. They hide it like a guilty pleasure. You stop in a once grand villa on the outskirts of Carthago Nova. Its frescoes are faded, its gardens overgrown. In the pantry, you find one last jar sealed in wax. You crack it open. The sauce inside has separated. The smell is sharp but familiar. You imagine a family once sitting here, ladling it over lamb or lentils. Now, only silence remains. Are still true believers, though. A group of monks in a hilltop monastery use garum in their Friday meals. It reminds us of humility. One says, the poor man's wine. You taste their blend rough, earthy honest. No dolphin, thankfully. You meet one elderly woman near the Tiber who makes garum in secret. Just for me. She smiles. And my cat? She adds a dash to her stew and sighs. My father used to say Rome would never fall. But I knew it would when the fish sauce soared. Trade routes collapse. Garum workshops are abandoned. Some are buried by earthquakes, others sacked by invaders. Recipes are forgotten or hoarded by dying scholars. The clay jars remain, but their contents and their context slip away like brine through cracked hands. But even as the industry fades, its legacy lingers. Words endure. Garum becomes liquamen, then sauce, then just memory. Some fragments survive, notes in a cook's diary, amphora shards with faded paint, the lingering scent in porous stone. You leave the ruins behind, feet aching, thoughts heavy. What was once a proud engine of culture and commerce now lies still. Not with a bang, but a slow, salted sigh. You sit beneath a fig tree as the sun sets. In your bag, a single jar of garum remains. The last batch, perhaps. You uncork it. The smell is sharp, rich, alive. Rome may crumble. The factories may fall. But the taste, that will echo for centuries. You kneel in the dust beside a stone, lined pit, deep in the excavation site of a long, forgotten Roman port. The amphora fragments here are everywhere. Broken necks, handles, even entire jar bases, half buried in the soil. You pick one up and turn it over. There, faint but unmistakable, is the red paint of a garum label. Flos garum, Carthago Nova. The sauce is long gone, but its scent lingers in the clay. Your nose wrinkles involuntarily. Even after 2,000 years, the past still tickles your nostrils. Welcome to archaeology's funkiest obsession. Across the former Roman Empire, archaeologists keep unearthing traces of garum, sealed amphorae in shipwrecks, charred vats beneath volcanic ash, and graffiti praising or cursing particular brands. Every discovery adds another puzzle piece and raises new questions. You follow a team of researchers in Pompeii who are analyzing residue from jars that somehow survived Vesuvius's wrath. Their lab smells like a weird fish market. One expert, cheerfully nicknamed Professor Ancavi, holds up a vial of reddish, brown goo. We ran the protein breakdown, she says. Definitely mackerel. But this one has hints of mullet and possibly cuttlefish. And a surprise no salt. She pauses dramatically. A mistake, or a regional variation. Historians still argue. In a museum in Spain, you gaze at a stunning artifact, a complete garum amphora, unbroken, label intact. It's marked with the logo of Marcus Scaurus. The jar sits on velvet, spotlighted like a jewel. And rightly so. This jar traveled across the Mediterranean, survived centuries underground, and now stands as a symbol of Roman flavor and ambition. It's hard not to be impressed by fish sauce in a glass case. Elsewhere, in the ruins of Leptis Magna, scholars have found entire factory floors, complete with draining vats and sluices, still stained with ancient brine. Some areas show signs of retrofitting, suggesting that the garum industry didn't vanish overnight, but limped along, adapting as best it could. The scholars bicker about whether these changes mark decline or innovation. You nod politely and pretend to take notes, then sneak off to sniff a stone that may or may not be soaked in 1-800-year-old fish oil. Not every find is glamorous. In a British museum drawer, you see a collection of charred wooden stoppers, once used to seal garum jars. They look like nothing, really. But under magnification, they reveal tool marks, resin traces, and even faint initials. Small, humble remnants of a massive industry. You stumble into an open-air exhibit where a reenactor in tunic and sandals makes authentic garum the old way. He stirs a vat of chopped fish and salt while tourists gag politely. "Don't worry," he grins. "It only takes 4 months. And once the flies leave, the magic starts." You step back. At a university lecture, a professor unrolls a chart tracking garum exports across centuries. You're amazed at the volume. Tons of fish sauce shipped annually across thousands of miles. And yet, she says, we've barely scratched the surface. You wonder how many more jars lie hidden, waiting to be found. One dig in France uncovers a latrine with residue scraped from a broken garum jar. The presence of the sauce so far from the sea stuns even the skeptics. "They love this stuff?" A student whispers. "Loved it enough to carry it on carts across mountains, just to make dinner taste like home." Then comes the big question. Was garum truly vital to Roman life? Or just a flavor trend that spiraled out of control? Was it an economic linchpin? A luxury indulgence? A culinary security blanket? You hear experts say yes to all three. You also hear one grad student call it ancient ketchup, which somehow feels right and wrong at the same time. In the city of Rome itself, construction workers stumble on yet another buried garum workshop. The smell, once the dirt is disturbed, is unmistakable. They call in experts. Archaeologists arrive within hours, and somewhere in that mess of brick and clay, they find a shard with the familiar FG scrawl. It's like finding the signature of an old friend. Garum may be long gone from dinner tables, but its echo is everywhere, in our sauces, in our obsession with flavor, in the way food defines power and identity. You don't need a nose for ancient brine to feel it. You just need to know where to look. You sit at the edge of the dig site as the sun sinks low, turning the sky a warm gold. Beside you, a half-reconstructed jar glows softly in the fading light. Once, it carried a sauce that flavored empires. Now, it carries memory. And that, you think, might be the most powerful aftertaste of all. The wooden door creaks as you step into a modern test kitchen in Naples. The countertops are lined with strange experiments. Mason jars bubbling with fermenting anchovies. Plastic containers labeled with ominous words like Batch 17, Do Not Open. And at the center, a stainless steel fridge sealed with duct tape. You're here with a group of culinary archaeologists and food historians attempting to do what few have dared, recreate the real Roman garum. The lead chef, a wiry man named Stefano, greets you with a handshake that smells faintly of mackerel. "We've tried everything," he says. Sardines, mackerel, mullet, even squid once. Big mistake. He gestures to a row of neatly labeled jars. Each is a little time capsule of ancient curiosity, some aged for weeks, others for over a year. "We call this one Neptune's mistake." You take a cautious sniff. You immediately regret it. They've used ancient sources, Apicius, Columella, Pliny the Elder, as their guides. Some instructions are clear fish, salt sun. Others are more cryptic. One recipe suggests burying the vat for months and sacrificing a chicken nearby. We skip that part. Stefano says, "Mosley, you're invited to a tasting. First up, a filtered garum made from sardines and aged 6 months. You brace yourself and sip. It's shockingly pleasant, deep, rich, a little nutty, like soy sauce with ocean memories. The next one, less successful. Overly sharp, almost metallic. First draft, they admit. As the team works, they joke like scientists in a sitcom. One adds bay leaf for a spicy kick. Another swears by adding roasted garlic near the end. They debate the ethics of dolphin, agree it's off limits, then toast with shot glasses of garum, infused tomato juice. You politely fake your sip. Historians still argue how accurate these recreations are. After all, climate, fish diets, and even salt composition have changed over 2 millennia. But that's not the point. The real thrill is in the attempt. To taste what Caesar might have tasted, to stand in the sticky sandals of a Roman chef. Some modern chefs take garum even further. At a Michelin-starred restaurant in Copenhagen, a head chef is experimenting with new Nordic garum, using local trout, pine needles, and fermented seaweed. Another in Tokyo makes a Japanese, Roman fusion, sushi with garum glaze. It shouldn't work. It does. You meet a British food historian who built a small garum fermenter in her backyard. Her neighbors complained about the smell. She invited them to dinner. They now bring her anchovies. Online forums trade recipes, offer fermentation advice, and share horror stories. One user proudly posts a photo of a clay amphora buried in their garden. Another shows a video of a vat exploding in the sun. Note to self, the caption reads, "Never seal the lid tight." Culinary archaeology is not for the faint of heart or nose. Even in academia, garum stirs debate. One professor insists garum was misunderstood, a symbol of Roman greed and decadence. Another counters that it was democratic, flavorful, and vital to daily life. You sip from a jar of the latest blend and think, why not both? There's also the emotional side. One researcher describes how tasting her first batch brought her to tears. "It felt like touching history," she says. "Like hearing your ancestors whisper through your taste buds." You believe her. The moment lingers on your tongue. Not everyone is enchanted, of course. Some critics scoff at the revival. "Why resurrect fish rot?" they say. "There's ketchup now." But the garum revival isn't about replacing modern tastes. It's about honoring a forgotten lineage, a flavor that shaped economies, cultures, and cravings for centuries. You step into the backyard where a new batch is just beginning to ferment. The sun hits the jar at the right angle, and the fish glisten beneath the salt like tiny fossils of the future. The air smells familiar. It hits you, this is full circle. From ancient vats on Roman shores to modern kitchens, garum has survived in ghost form, and now it's back, not just as a sauce, but as a story, bottled, briny, and bubbling with life. You take one last taste of the newest blend, rich, complex, a little chaotic. Just like Rome, the firelight fades, the sauce settles, and your journey through garum's salty world eases into quiet memory. You close your eyes and let the images drift by sun, bleached vats by the sea, amphorae clinking on ships, market stalls bustling with trade, noble banquets dripping with extravagance. You remember the street kitchens, the graffiti wars, the prayers whispered over jars buried with care. All those stories, stitched together by a thread of taste so ancient, so elemental, it still flickers on modern tongues. Let your breath slow. The scent lingers faintly in the back of your imagination, sharp, sweet, a little strange. Like old letters found in a drawer, like music played on forgotten strings. The kind of flavor that doesn't vanish. It echoes. You think of the old woman stirring stew for her cat, the monk preparing fish sauce for Friday's humble meal, the chef in Naples grinning as he lifts the lid. They're all part of the same recipe. One that transcends borders, classes, centuries. A recipe that says, we were here, we ate, we felt, we remembered. Let the past drift gently behind you like a scent on the wind, warm and distant. The story of garum is not over. Not really. Somewhere, even now, another jar is opening. Somewhere another spoon stirs. And you? You've traveled far, from banquet hall to back alley, temple to tomb, tasting the empire one drop at a time. Now rest. Let your thoughts soften. Let the waves of ancient waters wash over you. The lights are low. The world is quiet. Sleep well, seasoned traveler.